Alrighty, so welcome to the last session of the historical and ethnographical background of the Maya cosmology course. In this session, we're going to cover the evolution of the Mayan languages. We're going to study how the Mayan languages evolved throughout time. And pretty much all you have to understand or learn or take a look at is this chart. So this chart shows us that at what point in time, there was a Proto-Mayan language. And that Proto-Mayan language gave rise to all the languages that we know. So this is important because we really want to understand, get familiarized, at least in a broad context, with the fact that there is different native people, native Mayas. They're all considered Mayan descendants or Mayas. They all call themselves Mayas, but then they will say, "Well, I'm a Tzeltal Maya. I'm a Mam Maya," or they can just say, "I'm a Mam" or "I'm a Quiche." But they all understand that they are Mayas, right? And so that's important for us to at least have that and as a common knowledge. And but then if you want to get into the study of all of this, then you're going to get those materials with the presentation, and you'll have that opportunity to study in depth everything. So we can see that they date around 2,000 years back, the Proto-Mayan language, that then separated into four main branches: the Huastecan branch, the Yucatecan, or we can call it a peninsular branch, and then we have the southern kind of two branches, because then the Yucatan Peninsula is up to the north and then to the south. Um, like in this map, you can see that, well, the Huastec branch went west and north, really far away. And then you have the Yucatec branch that filled most of the Yucatan Peninsula. And then you have down to the south, the east and west main branches. And as you can see in this image, the Proto-Maya, it's believed to have been created or invented, or how would that work? Or at least this was the region where they can trace evidences back to where some kind of Proto-Maya was spoken. Now, I've been told personally by Mayan, they weren't elders, but they're kind of like they knew something. Um, that the Maya, the Proto-Maya was actually it's Itzah Maya, Itzah, one of the branches that of the modern branches. There's maybe two or three Itzah speakers that still remain, and and as you can see, this is in the Yucatecan branch, the Itzah language. But then the Itzah, where the only place where this type of Itzah language is still spoken is around Lake Petén Itzah, which is right around here, or maybe around here, in the Petén region. And but then that's one of the opinions. Then I've read in books that then the Proto-Maya was born in the highlands around in the department of um, Huehuetenango in Guatemala. So that's another opinion. Believes that the Proto-Mayan was really some kind of lost language that was created or that existed way back in time in the region of the highlands of Huehuetenango, which all of those opinions, they coincide with this general region of where the Proto-Maya came from. So as with any language, it starts getting variations. It travels. It fuses with other regions, with other peoples, and it develops different more than dialects. These are considered actual languages. So let's point that out because it's important. These are all languages. They're pretty much unintelligible amongst them. They're very similar. Like for example, here if we you take the Celtal and Tzotzil languages, they can sound similar. They have similar words, but they are unintelligible. That means if you speak fluent Tzotzil, or if you see a Tzotzil person speaking to a Celtal person, they don't understand each other, not at all. They they might understand a few things, but they're really languages. So within these languages, these 32, that's the magical number. It comes in the test how many current languages there is. Um, you have dialects, and those it would be a nightmare to try and make a map of those and see where they because it depends on which one, but some of them that have a lot of speakers are spoken in very vast regions, and then they have a lot of variations, a lot of dialects, but then those are intelligible amongst them. You can understand even with great dialectal variations. You can understand because it's one single language. So that's very important to understand. In Spanish, in Mexico, there's a lot of people think that speaking a dialect, they say, "Oh, you speak a dialect," when they want to say this. You won't suffer from this because you guys are not in Mexico. But I have to teach this to Mexicans when I teach this course in Spanish to Mexicans. That in Mexico, people say, "Oh, you speak a dialect," when they are referring to an indigenous language, right? And that's a kind of a way to devaluate the somehow subconsciously the language, because it's a language. It's not. I mean, of course, everybody speaks the dialect of the language. I speak Mexican Bolivian dialect of Spanish, and my accent right now in English is probably like a Oregonian dialect because I learned English in Oregon, and but then we all speak a language, so it's important to recognize it as a language. Okay, so you saw the places where the languages are kind of spoken. You saw that the Huastecan branch, the Huastec, which the proper name in Huastec for the Huastec language is Tenec. So Tenec is spoken in the state of Veracruz, in the northern state of Veracruz. It does have a very Maya sound. There are I mean, you can totally tell that it has a Mayan origin, the Tenec. Then the Yucatec branch, the peninsular, we saw that, and remember the photos that you saw from the albums? Those are from the Lacandon and the Lacandon people, and so that's this one right here, Lacantun. Now, within this one, it is very interesting, and there's probably a lot more to study and a lot that hasn't been studied. And I believe that's one of the cases with Lacandon Maya, because it has very two distinct dialects that are so different that they are unintelligible amongst them. One is the Lacanja dialect, which is where I lived, and that one is very close to the Yucatec, the peninsular Maya. It's almost the same thing with some changes. They use R's instead of L's. Is one of the few Mayan languages that uses R's. Normally, in all Mayan languages, there's no R sound, and so they use R. So, for example, for in Yucatec, earth would be luum, 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 and they say ruum, ruum. That's what they say for earth. So there's that, and then there's another variation of this Lacantun language up in the mountains in the Lacandon, where only two very small communities that speak it. Naha and Metzabok are the two other communities, and those two languages are pretty much different. So I would add another branch here somewhere and make that difference, because I actually think they are two languages. So that would make 33 if you count that. But then I don't know if they haven't studied that. I haven't found any information about that, um, except by living with Lacandons, which is the Mayas that I spent the most amount of time with. Okay, so then I did spend some time in the Saltal region, and of course the Chol as well. Palenque is Chol. So Chol is going to be very important for us, and you have to remember this: Chol, Chol, or Chol, um, because that's the language that is used to write Maya syllabic writing. Maya syllabic writing that is found in all of the classic sites in the rainforests are written in a Chol language. So you would ask, so what's the language that the classic Mayas spoke? Okay, the answer is Chol proper. This Chol proper back here. See, and you see the timeline, and you see that it's around 500, 600, around the classical period that this was spoken. So then I told you in the last session about the son of Pacal being the one that created this Saltalan branch. And that's an interesting story, because it makes me think, oh wow, so this language started because of a single person. I mean, it's attributed to a single person that this difference begun, right? This new language was created. So that's kind of interesting to me. And then with time, that separated into Tzeltal and Tzotzil, those two languages. And it probably has to do with the story we saw about the war and the Chenek taking over, and the Chenek being of Tzotzil and Tzeltal origin, coming out of the caves, the short people that came out of the caves and that took over the sites and created war. So it probably has to do with that. And then pretty much we can draw a line maybe around here. Well, it's not like precise, but just as a rough sense, like everything down here would be in Guatemala, and everything up here would be in Mexico, in the states of Chiapas and Yucatan. Pretty much, kind of, okay? This map will help with that. So so you can see that what today is Guatemala, then it has the MAM, or Mamiano here in Spanish, Quicheano kind of main branches, which are the eastern branch. So then you can see kind of Guatemala kind of makes and Chiapas, that could be the language barrier of the east and west kind of main branches. And then the northern Yucatec branch, and we saw Huastec. And so that's how you can kind of map the languages in a rough sense. This is another map that might help you. Kind of the eastern branch, the western branch. This would be the Chol area. This would be the Itza and La Cantun kind of variants, or the lost. Maybe this is the Proto-Mayan, and then the peninsular. This is kind of like main regions where you have this distinct language branches. This is a map, and let's put this into context with all of the rest of the languages. This is important. Here we have a map of Mexico and Guatemala and basically Mesoamerica, and all the language roots that are spoken, okay? So there are three main branches or roots, language roots. They're very, very different, but at the same time, they do share some things, because they did coexist and they did share things, right? So one of them is the Otomanguean branch, the ones in purple here. So let's do a little close-up. Oh, I don't have the close-up. Okay, I have to do the close-up manually, okay? Let me get a close up for you. So let's do a close up here, so you can see that. So I want to do the close up and bring back the pointer, and I can't do that. Okay, that's not good. So I can't do close up and pointer. So the purple is the Oaxaca region, and it's the Otomanguean root. They all have a similar root. And we saw that a little bit when we saw the historical evolution of the people, where there's kind of like a main Oaxaca group, right? So you see the green is the Maya root, all the different Maya roots. You can see here the Huastec, right, up in the north, kind of a little bit out of its place, out of its main region. And then you have the Uto Aztecan, which would be the blue. Those would be the third. There's like a fourth one that sometimes it's kind of grouped with the Uto Aztecan. I am not a linguist. Haven't gone deep into understanding the differences between these. What here is the orange and the blue, the Hocaltecan branch and the Utoaztecan branch. The Hocaltecan goes up into what's now the United States, and the Utoaztecan does the same thing. There's like Utoaztecan branches up north, in what today is the United States. And how do they group this? Well, the sounds. Basically, do they sound alike? Are there grammatical different similarities? Are there historical evidences that can group them together? And yes, there are. Are there geographical regions where they are spoken? There kind of is. We can see one of the things I want to point out is that the Otomanguean, which is a very vast root, okay? And since I'm not a linguist and haven't been able to be a linguist and haven't been able to study all of the languages, there are 80 some languages in what today is Mexico, then I couldn't tell you how much of this is really defined. It looks to me that this white colors here are the kind of here it says unclassified extinct in the yellow. But I think these other ones, Totonacan, Soquian, Wavian, Tarascan, those languages, they're kind of subgrouped to Otomanguean, but I have the suspicion that they might be just a different, but I can't confirm that, okay, myself. We would have to ask a linguist that has studied that. But my suspicion is that they're grouped together for practical reasons, but they are very different. So Soquian, very interesting. The Soquian one you see there, Soquian, is spoken, you can see here right in there, where in parts of what today is Chiapas, and that sometimes that indigenous group is grouped amongst the Mayas, but then the language origin and the sounds are very different, and you can see that it's not really clear. I remember reading once that one anthropologist believed that is the kind of the proto of all languages. He proposed the Soke language. He proposed that because they found one of the oldest human remains in a cave right in the region here where the Soke is spoken. So he kind of linked some things, and he believes that Soke, or the Sokian root, is kind of the mother of all the roots. Then, of course, we could think or say that Utoaztecan and Hocaltecan, they're kind of influences from the north that came south, because we do know that, this Bering Strait theory, it's partially true. So there are evidences, and it is true that people came across the Bering Strait that had Asian cultural remains, legacies, and they brought them here. But then that's not the only people, right? That would be the mistake of that theory, thinking that it was the only theory, the only people. That was the way that this part of the world was populated. I think that is wrong, and there are evidences for that. So, but then it is partially true. They did. There were people that traveled, came and brought their influences through the Bering Strait and down from the north. So they passed through here. Mexico, we saw that geographically is the funnel. It's kind of a land bridge, and they left their legacy, and it became what today is the most spoken native language in Mexico, which is the Nahuatl language. So I'm gonna show you just as fun some words, some similarities. So as you can see here, one of the people or groups or nations that is considered of a very straight Toltec descendants, like representants, modern representants of the ancient Toltecs, are the Huirrárica people, sometimes known or called Huicholes. And they speak their Huirrárica language. And for example, in Huirrárica, a word, for example, of the moon is Metzeri. Metzeri. So in Nahuatl, the language that is spoken in most of the central region today in Mexico, which was the language spoken by the Aztecs or the Mexica, which is also called Mexicatl or Mexican language. So it is the actual Mexican language. That's where, as well, Mexico, the word Mexico came from this language and from this people. So Metzeri in Nahuatl is Metztli, Metztli. So you can hear the similarity. Metzeri, Metztli. I'm thinking of another one. Tatewari is the god of fire, but then Tlit is fire in Nahuatl or Huehueteotl, so that's not so similar. So there are similarities. I was also once told by this man that you can even find similarities among different roots. For example, in Maya, the word for wind is ik, ik. And in Nahuatl, the word for wind is ehecatl, ehecatl. So he found the similarity where it's ik, ek, right? It's kind of similar. Ik, ehecatl, ik, ehecatl. So I guess there was a lot of mutual influence, and especially, and I like to think that there's also this kind of magical role of the sound of words, and so in some very essential things like the elements that would be shared amongst different people, kind of they would share the same concepts, and you will find that too in modern, for example, Maya languages up in the northern Yucatan, words that are directly brought in from Nahuatl, right? For example, the women's dress, a type of clothes that they wear in Nahuatl is called huipil or huipili, and in Maya, Yucatec Maya, is called ipil, ipil. So they kind of adopted, kind of Mayanized some of the Nahuatl words. Very few of them. It's not really that the language absorbed so much as, for example, I see that Japanese absorbed a whole lot of vocabulary from English. It's not the case in Maya languages. They have 1 or 2 or 5 or 20 words that were brought in, but not that many. They really stuck to their sounds and to their ways, language ways. So this is the map that you need to kind of understand the 3 main routes. Some things that we don't know that are kind of still classified kind of in another thing. We're not sure, like the Totonac language here in the northern Veracruz. The sounds from Totonac to me are like, wow, doesn't sound. I mean, because if you try to group with the other Otomanguean, the Oaxacan ones, they're very, very different, very, very different sounds of Totonac and, for example, Mixteca or Mazateca or Zapoteca or Zapotec or Mixtec or languages. They have different. They're very different. So I'm not sure they really come from the same origin. Now, here in the South, you might ask yourself, well, what happens down South? We start getting into different roots. We start getting into already into influence from Colombia, from the Amazon. So that's why this is already not really part of Mesoamerica, because the language, the culture, it really resembles cultures from further south, and of course with its proper influences from up here north, right? Um, so that's kind of it with the Maya languages.
Kayo,